Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Stadium Pulse. My name is Tegan Randolph, your host. I actually got to take this a little down. There we go. Oh, too far. There we go. I'm going to step this back a little bit. Welcome to the Stadium Pulse. Still trying to get acclimated. Here is a beautiful December 21st in Nashville, Tennessee. A frigid, cold Nashville. A victory Sunday? Victory Monday incoming for the Tennessee Titans, which is quite exciting if you think about it. The Titans, not a very good football team right now. And speaking of not very good football, we got plenty to talk about during the college football playoff. The first round, we officially are moving on into what is like a group of five, or not group of five, a 8-team playoff at this point, because the first round really did feel like a play-in. Pardon me, audio listeners, going to get some water. Actually, for one moment, I don't got a studio here, so we're going to actually move this light a little bit to the right. Does that make the shadow a little bit better? I hope it does. Get adjusted. Alrighty. If there's any audio issues, we may be cooked. I am on a time crunch. It has been one hell of a day. Had some emergencies to go handle. Oh, geez. This is just a great start to the show, folks. Microphone not doing well. All right. Let's take a step back. Let's give you a table of contents of what we're going to talk about today. We are going to be talking about the group of five, everyone. Everyone wants to talk about the group of five and whether or not they should be in the college football playoff, the results of Tulane and James Madison. We're going to talk about Texas A&M and Miami, Oklahoma and Alabama. And then, of course, we got some portal updates really around the quarterbacks. We haven't had the big Ryan Williams for obvious reasons, but we haven't had the Cam Colemans. We've had some running backs hop into the portal, but we haven't had the marquee guys that I think really will make an impact. But quarterbacks is everyone's favorite position, so we got to talk about the quarterbacks sooner or later. Should the group of five have their own playoff? Should the group of five be in the college football playoff? Should the group of five even be in the conversations for national championship contention? That is what everyone is talking about, because we had Oregon dominate James Madison. I understand you may be already typing up, well, they put up 30 on him. Congratulations, you still got dominated for 4 quarters and Oregon put up 51. The game was never in doubt. The game was never any kind of fear incited into Oregon. If anything, Oregon looked at this as a travesty on how they didn't put up 70 and blow them out by 40. But congratulations, James Madison. You know, they had a fantastic season. And I do not want that to get lost on everyone in terms of what we should be talking about with the college football playoff, because unfortunately, people like myself and many others want to talk about the group of five in general. And what is the next playoff and the playoff after that? What is the format going to look like when we're looking at whether or not they should be in? And the truth is, I don't think that they should unless they've earned it. And based on this format, they have. But at the end of the day, this format needs to change. It just has to change. When we're talking about teams that are barely top 25, getting a charity case bid because we feel that we need to be at the same level of college basketball and believe that Cinderellas are real, we have now wedged a square peg into a triangle hole. There's no way to talk about it in any other fashion, because unfortunately we're going to have to talk about Tulane getting smacked around by Ole Miss for the second time this season, James Madison getting smacked around by Oregon as expected, instead of how incredible their seasons have gone and how remarkable that is. And frankly, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, because the solution to fix all of this is not having this expanded playoff at all. It's so funny. And Chris, this is for you. It is so funny the amount of people that are so close to realizing that the solution was never to expand the playoff. I see time and time again the amount of people that have posted these blowouts from all the other Power Four programs in the early rounds of the playoff to justify why the group of five getting blown out isn't that big of a deal. The truth is, that's so close to my point on why you shouldn't expand the playoff, because there's not 8+ teams that are contending for the national championship. And I know what your rebuttal is. I know exactly where you're going to go when you say, oh, well, Ohio State was a back end seed and they went on a run. They won the national championship. To me, I don't think Ohio State should have had the opportunity to be playing for a national championship. If we just cut them off at the end of the regular season, they kind of got handed a golden opportunity to go win the whole thing, and they took advantage of it. But you lost to Oregon, and then you lost egregiously to Michigan. And at the end of the day, neither of those losses really mattered in the grand scheme of things. They didn't have to go to a Big Ten championship. They didn't have an opportunity to prove themselves as a team worthy for the national championship. They kind of got to moonwalk their way through the regular season, have a couple bumps in the road, one against their biggest rival, and it didn't matter. They still were able to go beat Tennessee. They were able to go on the run, and they were the Cinderella that no one wanted. But people time and time again continue to get so close to the point of, wow, we really don't have that many elite teams that need to be fighting for the national championship, the group of five included, because if you shrink down the amount of playoff spots, there's more value to be placed on the other bowl games, the more impressive tier 2 bowl games that used to exist in college football. And we could be talking about those opportunities. Like the BCS bowls were the tier 2s, and we got to have incredible moments like Boise State going and beating Oklahoma. Those moments that we talk about, they end their season with an incredible win that we talk about for years. Instead, if they manage to pull off an incredible win, we're going to be talking about them as a team that's going to be a second round out, because they're not going to be able to string along multiple wins. You're delusional if you think otherwise. And I could sit here and go in circles and circles and talk about time and time again how the group of five shouldn't be in the playoff. They're playing a different brand of football, that this, that, and the third. And as, I guess, rudimentary or like repetitive as that may sound, I'd rather talk about some of the solutions that we could actually implement. What are the solutions for the group of five? Because I think the way that it goes, unfortunately, with how unimpressive the JMUs and the Tulanes of the world were this recent college football playoff run, it has been, I guess, the final nail in the coffin for the group of five. And so I see three main solutions for the group of five moving forward. The unlikely option, but the one that I would be the biggest fan of as someone that is a huge fan of soccer, relegation is perfectly set up. If there is one sport in America that could adopt the relegation system, it's college football. With the amount of teams that they have, the amount of conferences that they have, frankly, it's impossible to pull off at this point with the amount of TV rights deals, and there wouldn't be a world where the Power Four teams that are already in that cutoff would ever risk their opportunity to potentially get relegated. But it would be the perfect solution to fix all of this. But if you don't know what relegation is, basically the worst teams of certain conferences, say you're the worst team in the Big 12, you could get relegated to the Sun Belt. And if you win the Sun Belt, you have an opportunity to get uplifted to the Big 12. There would be that scenario. I think it's impossible, but I always want to mention it because I do think it's an incredible solution to this problem. I think the most realistic one is the Notre Dame clause. Notre Dame, after they got in their words, screwed over after they got snubbed in the college football playoff. There is now a clause that is in effect in terms of them having a guaranteed spot in the playoff as long as they make it into the top 12, which to me is egregious. But if you apply that for the group of five, it may actually work. I mean, truly, as we look back in college football history, you know a good group of five team when you see it. We talk about Boise State a lot. We talked about Cincinnati when they made it to the top four. They earned that right to go to the college football playoff. Let these teams earn that right and opportunity because, frankly, JMU, as much of an incredible season as they had and getting this opportunity to go to Autzen Stadium, they didn't play a Power Four or a top 50 power rated team the entire season, whereas we see teams like Texas, teams like Notre Dame, teams like BYU, Vanderbilt go through these gauntlets, and for them to be on the outside looking in is quite unfortunate. It is at the end of the day. And the last solution that I think is semi-realistic, but not very likely just due to some of, I guess, the egos for both sides, is the group of five playoff. Now, I've talked about it on this page time and time again. I think the group of five playoff makes a ton of sense. I think the group of five having something to play for, it is not an indictment on them not getting an opportunity to play for the big thing. I mean, frankly, I think you could have a mix of, if they make it into the top 12, let them play for the big dance. But everyone else, you go into a different tournament, and then there's so many other teams that are competing, and some of the top end group of five matchups would be incredible. I mean, we could see Tulane and JMU go head to head for a championship if they were to go win the whole thing. And I think that would be a lot more enticing. I think that would be a lot more competitive. And I think that would be better for the sport to be able to have a mini tournament between some of the top group of five teams to really showcase. And let's call a spade a spade. It would be a grand showcase of some of the talent that's more than likely going to go play in the Power Four. I think that would be incredible, but there would also have to be a long line of different changes to best get college football set up for success moving forward outside of some of these processes to get certain teams in. But listen, I think the biggest thing I think people need to understand when talking about the group of five is the idea of a Cinderella in college football is not realistic. It's just not, especially since we went to a tournament form. A BCS matchup, a one-off, a bowl game with a group of five matchup versus a Power Four team, that worked. That worked because when you saw a good group of five team get this opportunity, more times than not, you would get this big chance where either A, you see number one, a team is able to pull off the big upset. That's the end of their season. They are a bowl winner. They're the Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, whatever it may be. And their season ends on a high note. Whereas we go to this tournament where you are asking these teams that are in such a mile gap in terms of talent rosters to not only win once, but multiple times over. They're going to end the season on a bad note regardless. And we're going to be talking about them as first or second round outs, how they didn't deserve in the playoff, all these negatives to take away from what is, at the end of the day, an incredible season. And I'm trying to find a solution to uplift these group of five teams and be of support of them because, frankly, I love group of five football. I watch it all the time. And it's unfortunate that we're stuck in this vortex of talking about whether or not they should be in the playoff when we could be celebrating some of their best moments. Okay, let's talk about Miami and Texas A&M. I don't want to talk about this game. I don't want to talk about this game, man. Alrighty. Miami beats Texas A&M 10-3. This was one of the games of all time, to say the least. This game was ugly. It was 0-0 at halftime. You had one of the worst special teams performances between two programs that I'd seen in a very long time. Wind was crazy. I give them credit there, or I give them the excuse there that we're looking at winds that are going left to right, right to left, up, down, left, right, whatever kind of code you want to go with. That's how the wind was going. It was egregious, but This was a really brutal performance from both sides. These two teams looked like they had not played football in 3 weeks. They hadn't, and they looked it. I mean, this was going to be a game, as everyone talked about, which quarterback was going to make more mistakes. And it was Marcel Reed. You want to know why Carson Beck didn't make any mistakes? He was able to get the ball out of his hands, not in terms of throwing it, but handing it off. Miami has had an inconsistent rushing attack all season. And it was benefited from the fact that Mark Fletcher and this A&M defense was a nightmare matchup for the A&M defense, better said. Mark Fletcher went for 17 carries, 172 yards. You're going to win a lot of football games that way, especially when we look at Texas A&M. Even though you had Le'Veon Moss return, sometimes it just doesn't matter. Sometimes, unfortunately, he had not played since week 6. He gets injured in this game. He is one of the most talented running backs in the country. Le'Veon Moss is an incredible back when he's on the football field. But that caveat, man, it's a caveat of when he is on the football field, and it is a brutal, brutal loss whenever you lost him. You also lost Albert Regis, a veteran defensive tackle. I don't want to go down. If you see the Kyle Field to the left of me and the A&M pennant behind me, you understand why I'm getting a little fixated on A&M. Let's talk about the winners. Let's talk about Miami. Miami's going to be moving on to face off against Ohio State. This was a Mark Fletcher masterclass, and this was a Ruben Bain masterclass. And sometimes when we look at these ugly battles between two very defensive forward teams, 10-3 is the final score. All you need is a special performance from 1 to 2 players, and that is the difference. Malachi Toney made enough plays. He got the touchdown following a fumble at the middle of the field, was able to bounce back. That is resilient. That's impressive. That's exactly what you're looking for out of your stars, because this offense runs right through him. But not only that, you got a performance that you didn't expect. Now, I know Miami fans were expecting to be able to run the football, but Mark Fletcher going 17 for 172, can't tell me that was expected. This A&M defense continues to allow teams that can't run the ball to magically be able to run efficiently on them time and time again, and that's the difference. But then we turn to the other side of the ball. We flip the page and we look at Ruben Bain. Call a spade, man. You could see this one a mile away. When we talk about Ruben Bain, I mean, I understand there's people out there that think he could be a second-round pick. They're delusional. This is a NFL star waiting to happen. This is a guy that's going to be playing on Sundays. This is a guy that I think is going to be a star on any defense that selects him. He is a freak of nature. People want to talk about arm length. I don't care. He is a baller. And unfortunately, for Texas A&M, the offensive line had to chirp at him. You had to give him extra ammo. You had to give him bulletin board material. Now, I understand many people will say, oh, well, now he's going to play even harder than he did before. Listen, man, if you wanted to give him free motivation, you did it, because Ruben Bain went 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and a blocked field goal. Talk about bounce back. He had that quote from, and if you did not hear, Trey Zune said, we don't think he's going to be much of a factor, in the most paraphrased quote of all time. He had that as his screen background, posted that on a press conference. I mean, Ruben Bain masterclass and a Mark Fletcher masterclass is the only way you can describe it. And like we stated before, you needed the ball out of Carson Beck's hands, and a performance like that on the offensive side of the ball was huge, and enough plays, because you really felt like there was a breaking point in this second half where the A&M offensive line just continued to crumble. It seemed like every single play, Marcel Reed had to create something. He had to escape. He had to make something out of nothing. And unfortunately, as we pivot to Texas A&M, because we'll talk about Miami and Ohio State later this week, the question around Aggieland right now is Marcel Reed a good enough quarterback, or can he be good enough to win a national championship? Marcel Reed with 3 turnovers in this game. And I wrote down he just wasn't good enough. We can look at Colin Klein and the fact that he was 1 foot out the door. He's focusing on Kansas State. He's now the head coach there, if you did not know. And he's the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M. Ever since November, midpoint, we have seen back-to-back collapses in the month of November and beyond from Marcel Reed. Now, I give excuse to last year because The offense was set around Connor Wigman, who is obviously the Houston quarterback right now. And then you go into this offseason, you develop, you have better weapons around Mario Craver, Casey, all these pieces, and you do play better. You do. Like, I think a lot of people get lost in translation in their emotions on Marcel Reed's performance in 2025. But frankly, the things that he needs to get better at come with maturing as a quarterback. So to answer the question, do I think he can win A&M a national championship? I do. But that's not to say it's going to be easy. That's not to say I think it's likely. I mean, he is a quarterback that is learning how to really play quarterback live in SEC play, and that's a very difficult thing to do, and it's not going to get easier. We're looking at a quarterback that is going to be missing majority of his offensive line going into this offseason. Casey's more than likely going to the NFL draft. He's going to be missing his star running back officially. Le'Veon Moss will be going to the draft, and a lot of pieces on the defense. This was his best supporting cast. This was an incredible collection of talent that will be definitely taking a hit. Now, Texas A&M is built for the portal, and the funding and the resources is all there, and you have a new offensive coordinator. There's going to be a ton of changes going into 2026. So the question really is, can he develop? And we'll talk about it throughout this offseason. If you love A&M content, obviously I'm biased in that sense. I have a page, Gig'em Tegan. Feel free to check it out, where I will dive into the nitty gritty of all of that. But Marcel Reed wasn't good enough because the rushing attack wasn't there. The team that had to put the ball into their quarterback's hands was the team that was going to lose this matchup, and we saw that live and in fashion. A&M's defense wasn't good enough. Their offense wasn't good enough. And once again, we're looking at another situation where A&M has this incredible opportunity in front of them, this magical moment in Kyle Field in front of 110,000 fans, and the offense isn't good enough. Something has to change, and that's why you pay Mike Elko. Let's talk about Oklahoma and Alabama before we give some quick portal updates. What was the score of this game? What was the final score? Oh my God. One moment, everyone. I apologize, everyone. My dog walked in and knocked over one of my lights, and it hit her. So I hope she's okay. Okay. Yeah, she's under my desk. She's okay. Apologies. Oklahoma beats... No, scratch that. Chris, you didn't see that. Alabama beats Oklahoma 34-24. In what was the most interesting game of the entire college football round one, this game was so interesting to watch. We watched Oklahoma go to a 17-0 lead like that. 17-0. Alabama was plus 700 live to win the whole thing. And it was looking like you saw John Mateer of old. You saw John Mateer of the first half of the season. You saw John Mateer, the Heisman candidate. And the defense is flying to the football. It looked like this was the team that potentially could win a national championship. I don't say that lightly. This team was remarkable. It was incredible. Like, whatever adjective you want to use. And 27 points straight from Alabama? An offense that looked putrid. Like, I don't know how else to say it, man. The offense looked putrid. That's the best way you can articulate it. It was looking like they were misfiring on every cylinder. Ty Simpson looked like the back injury was finally getting the best of him. There's so much to talk about with this game. And it really comes down to, and what I wrote was Latsier Brooks and Ty Simpson. That was the difference. That's what made this game into Alabama's and not an Oklahoma blowout. Because when they could not get it to Ryan Williams, they couldn't get it to Bernard, they couldn't get to Horton, it came down to a true freshman making the difference and creating just enough plays to give them an opportunity to win the football game. And unfortunately, Alabama was able to take the punch and move forward. Alabama was the team that was able to absorb the hit and come back even stronger, because once Oklahoma got punched in the mouth, it was wraps. Like I said, 27 straight. And unfortunately, John Mateer, the identity of the Oklahoma offense is basically John Mateer's play style, in a sense of John Mateer and his volatility. You get these incredible highs. He's kind of like J.R. Smith. Incredible moments where he's on fire. Everything's firing. He is being able to hit every throw. He's able to create. He's able to run the football. And this was the most like himself that we had seen basically since October. But you get the volatility because it's not just the highs, unfortunately. The mistakes that he made were crucial. That's the only way you could really articulate it. They were vital. There was one play where he's rolling out to the left side. He has a wide open, I believe it was Deion Burks, just missed him. If he hits him in stride, you're looking at a touchdown more than likely. And then the pick. And the pick ends up being 6 points the other way. Like I said, every mistake that you could have made turned into the mistake that was make or break, frankly. That's the only way you can really articulate it. And Alabama just finds a way. I'm a little low energy. I apologize for that. But like, Alabama, just so impressive. Their defensive line was, I think, the real factor in this game. When we look at how they were able to just continuously take over the game is the best way you can articulate it. When we look at a team that was able to really get to John Mateer's head and really just ruin his night. Every single incompletion, it got worse and worse. He became really in his head. There's no rushing attack. The wide receivers got worse. The offensive line, like I said, this offense embodies his identity. And when he's playing bad, there's no other counterpunch. Kind of like the inverse of when we were talking about with Miami, where it's like, if it was really on Carson Beck's hands, you get that volatility. But when you get a performance from the rushing and you're able to really create something that is a counter identity, it becomes all the world of a difference. And we'll talk about Oklahoma probably in the offseason a little bit. There's some decisions to be made. Maybe John Mateer returns. I have not heard any reports around that. But Alabama will go and face Indiana, currently 6.5-point dogs. We'll talk about that game this week. But I got to cut the show short, guys. I apologize. I got a text. I got to get going. So I apologize for a little bit lower energy. I have not been in the house all day. So this is the first time I'm back home. So I appreciate everyone for taking a moment. Like, truly, this is not the best indictment of what the show is. I promise you're going to get much more energized than me, but I'm always going to be transparent. I'm always going to be honest with you guys. Thank you so much for giving the show an opportunity. I love talking ball with you guys. We've seen so much growth. And with that in mind, I will see you guys next time. Peace.